Okay, folks, welcome back. This is the weekend edition for the ICT Mentorship, February 14th, 2021. This episode's lesson is going to be New York Session Insights in a Weekly Range. All right, so here we have the economic calendar for the week to come. On Monday, it's a bank holiday in the U.S. 7:30 p.m. Australian dollar medium impact monetary policy meeting minutes. Tuesday, 8 p.m. medium impact Australian dollar speaker. Wednesday, London Open, 2 a.m. medium impact GBP with CPI number. Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. New York session, Canadian impact is medium for CPI number for that currency. High impact for US dollar, core retail sales. And later in the day, 2 p.m., medium impact FOMC meeting minutes. And then 7:30 p.m., Australian dollar, high impact employment change and unemployment rate. Thursday, New York session, 8:30 a.m., medium impact for US dollar, Philly Fed manufacturing index, unemployment claims. And 11 a.m., medium impact US dollar, crude oil inventories. Just for the folks that are new, again, every time we have a crude oil inventory number, that's always going to be impactful for Canadian dollar. So dollar CAD currencies, that's a study for you every single time we have a crude oil inventory data release. So note your charts around 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday with dollar CAD, and you may be able to see things like fair value gaps, institutional order flow entry drills, and runs to liquidity. 2 a.m. on Friday, London Open, GBP, high impact retail sales. 3:15 a.m., high impact euro dollar, flash service PMI. 4:30 a.m., pound dollar, high impact flash service PMI. 8:30 a.m., Canadian dollar, core retail sales. And 9:45, dollar medium impact flash manufacturing PMI. All right, the dollar daily chart. All right, so we have the dollar daily chart, and we have this level here is the equivalent to 79% retracement level and 62% retracement level. And we have come off that optimal trade entry handsomely off of also the fair value gap here on the higher time frame chart. We have a sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency. We traded up into basically consequent encroachment of that. I'd like to see it remain below that, and we'll see if it has any ability to get down and trade into its old January low. $60-minute dollar index. All right, here's that sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency on the daily chart. And we had price consolidate going into Thursday's trading. We have a sell side liquidity pool resting below these relative equal lows. We traded up into the bearish order block, which is right here, and the sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency, consequent encroachment, defined by the level here and here. So it went up about halfway, which is consequent encroachment, and nice reaction there. 15-minute time frame dollar index. Again, the sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency is all here. Now, when you look at it like this on the lower time frames, it doesn't look like it would be a sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency. It looks like it's rather inefficient, except for the little areas in here and here. Does not matter. You need to understand it from the daily time frame and then study. Once you go on the lower time frames, there's specific PD arrays that we'll focus on once we drop into lower time frames. But the context is working inside of that imbalance on the daily chart. So we had a buy side liquidity pool here. Again, as well here. Sell side liquidity pool, relative equal lows. So this is being viewed by retail traders as support. So the normal protocol is we're in a bearish market, dollar's likely to go lower. This is going to most likely be attacked. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm right, but this means that that's where I usually aim for. Price runs above short-term high in here and trades back down into a fair value gap. Consequent encroachment runs up, down closed candle inside of a breaker. The breaker is this last up closed candle because we have a low, the high, the lower low. So you find the highest up closed candle in there, extending out in time, cut through candles. We are not supply and demand. The breaker range is here, trades down into it here and into the order block. Rallies, clears buy side liquidity only right there. And what does it do? It runs above the short-term high into this last up closed candle, which is a bearish order block. But it's also the bearish order block on the 60-minute time frame and the sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency, consequent encroachment of the daily chart, which is again in this area here we will be focusing on. Price runs up, hits it, immediate rejection. So we have a small little breaker in here that might need to be traded to before we run into this area here. So watch that on Sunday and or Monday's trading. Eurodollar daily chart. All right, keeping it real clean and focused. We have our bullish order block we are anticipating a reaction at. A handsome bounce has occurred. Buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency with this one single candle defined by this high, this candle's low. We have the fair value gap. Trades down to just a little bit below consequent encroachment, but nonetheless it's nicely done. And then we had a real nice reaction off of that level. So do we have the continuation of the dollar going lower and euro going higher? If it does, we have a short-term little liquidity pool here that I'm not adding because I want to keep the chart clean, and I'm focusing here if we keep going higher. That's my anticipation. Until proven otherwise, that's what I'm looking for. What changes it? Well, if we trade down below on a closing basis, below the fair value gap low. Eurodollar hourly chart. All right, here's that daily buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency in the form of a fair value gap. So it's this level here, which is the premium high. This level here, which is the discount low on the daily chart. All we're doing is transposing those levels that were marked up on the daily chart. When we drop down into the 60-minute chart, they will exist here and here. Now, in between this level and this level, we have another fair value gap right there. And that's what's being shown here with the blue lines. So we have a fair value gap on the daily, and within that, and at consequent encroachment, we have another fair value gap there. And look at the reaction there. So we do have a buy side liquidity pool resting just above here. That's probably going to be the draw near term, and I'll be looking for higher prices as a result. Euro dollar 15-minute time frame. Fair value gap in here. Nice little optimal trade entry, sells off. Rebounds, small little gap right in here. It comes back, fills that in handsomely. Drops precipitously, comes back up in, sells off into that lower level hourly chart fair value gap. Look at the bodies respecting the lower level discount low of the gap, and then runs up. We have a bullish breaker in here. Okay, so we have a low, a high, the lower low, last up close candle, extending out in time. So we're going to see if there's any follow through on the upside as a result of that, and then attack the buy side liquidity pool. If it needs to drop down, I'd like to see it not go below here. So we have a small little fair value gap in there. So if it drops down, that'll be enough. Preferably, I'd like to see it not do that. It's just what I'd rather see. All right, British pound daily chart. All right, so this thing keeps powering higher, punishing any short sellers. We have a small little buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency in here, defined by this candle's high, this candle's low. We traded down into basically consequent encroachment, may have been just a little shy of it, but nonetheless, nicely delivered reaction there. We have a premium array in the form of a bearish order block at 139.18 and 4. That's what's indicated here. You can go out to your own time frame on the daily zoom out and you'll find that pretty easy. 1 hour chart on the British pound versus US dollar. Buy side liquidity pool resting above these relative equal highs. Trades down into a bullish order block and the old fair value gap here. Okay, extend that out in time, hits it, bang, rallies. So the larger imbalance here has the smaller old fair value gap and then the order block as well. So it trades down into these discount arrays and then you get the reaction. The question you get many times listening to me talk about fair value gaps, and when you see examples like this, it'll be, when do fair value gaps expire? Well, some of the rules are going to be applied to the ideas around the IPTA data ranges, and you learn that later in the mentorship, and I'll touch on those as well. So those individuals that know about the IPTA data ranges, they're not done. I haven't completed the teachings on those, so it's not just what you think you already know about it and it's it. We got to come back in and fill in a lot of gaps. British pound versus US dollar on 15-minute time frame. All right, so we have a buy side liquidity pool here that was reached into as well. The top of the old fair value gap, which is the premium high, that's what's being traded to here perfectly. And you get this reaction. Now remember I was talking about how the concepts I'm teaching you, contrast that with retail. Retail's support resistance idea, everybody's indoctrinated with that. I was the same way. But the books teach you to anticipate these types of reactions on supposed support and or resistance levels. The problem is it's so subjective. Which level do you draw a line on? So one of the things I've counseled you to do is in your charting, you want to keep a chart with your fair value gaps and keep extending them in the time. Now, obviously, you want to do this for each time frame, and that way you don't have, I think, 30 different fair value gaps, because then it'll start to lose its significance by studying it. So just keep a chart with 1 hour chart or 15-minute time frame, a daily chart, and keep extending them in the future. And don't worry about when they expire for right now. I want you to just study the influence they have way in the future. They'll come back to these levels and you'll get sensitivity. So you'll learn more things as we go through this year as it relates to fair value gaps and things of this nature. But for now, it's important for you to get a greater appreciation for them, because once they're traded to and filled in, we don't abandon them. We don't say, well, that's done. We're going to look to something else. That's the worst thing you can do, because the algorithm, since it remembers that level, it went back to it to reprice to it and allow efficient delivery of price in between its high and low. Once it trades there and completely fills it in and moves away, we don't look at that as a one and done. It's likely to be sensitive in the future and multiple times. There's no limit to how many times it can react. Don't think like an order block as well. An order block can be traded to multiple times. And that's the nature of having a reclaimed order block. And as long as the dealing range hasn't been violated above the bearish order block or below the bullish order block, the order block can be reclaimed indefinitely, as long as the dealing range is intact. So don't listen to these folks that say, once you hit the order block or you hit a breaker, it's no longer sensitive. They are talking from ignorance. Okay, and that's again, this is the reason why I get bent out of shape when I see other people attempting to teach from the stance of ignorance. They have no idea what they're talking about. And they're doing more harm, not only marring their own image that you're trying to build on my back, but they're harming the students that would be underneath them listening to that nonsense. And what's the common result of all that? Order blocks and things of this nature don't work, because you're listening to someone that has no idea what they're talking about. But the reaction to order block, as I mentioned on the hourly chart, you can see that here. Trades back down into the last down closed candle here, which is the bullish order block, which is the fair value gap as well. Trades there, and then you get this nice pop. So you have the bullish order block, fair value gap, coupled with a fair value gap within a larger fair value gap. So what's occurring in this area here? Is that distribution? Yes, from those that were selling short. Smart money that's sold short here, they're distributing their short positions and accumulating new longs. So down here, this is accumulation of longs, and it's also distribution of shorts. So there's an overlapping, which is taking you back to the market efficiency paradigm. When we look at price, we're not looking at entry patterns, okay? We're not looking at trend lines and trends. We're looking at where's the liquidity and what's the narrative around that liquidity pool. This is accumulation of new longs, but it's also distribution of shorts. Then you have this pop up here. Let's go into a price action lesson. And this is one that I would have normally reserved it for like charter members, but I just feel generous, so it is what it is. The idea of the order block offering an intermediate term pop or bounce there. In other words, something tradable. And once it trades down there, the bodies of the candles are respecting that order block, which is absolutely phenomenal. When you start seeing these things, especially for someone that's been trading for a while and you've used things like, you know, harmonic or just retail support resistance ideas, when you see things like this, and I called your attention to it before it happened, and when it delivers, it's very, very exciting because you're learning about something that you were never aware of. It's been in your charts all this time. You can go back and look, like I showed on my YouTube channel the other day. I showed you a chart of cotton in that book that I originally started as a commodity trader. And the year that chart was produced and the data that was used to calculate it is 1983. That was before I was a trader. So I was trying to do the math on that, and I'm technically 11 years old in that year. So I wasn't even aware of trading. But that market produced the very pattern that I teach you here. Order block, fair value gap, and it runs with the optimal trade entry. Well, that same pattern is what's occurring right here. A low, it runs up, it drops back down, fair value gap, bullish order block. Now, here's the beautiful thing. I don't care, and neither should you, that this continues from where it's at right now. It doesn't need to. This run from here up into the order block here, that's a trade. Now, as a position trader, if you would have taken a long down here, you should be out with something. You should be taking something off here partially and allowing for the continuation on the upside, because nothing says that this is absolutely going to continue going higher. This could have been a long-term high. We don't know that. But from trading here up into here, you're working with a discount array over here, buying at a discount and selling at a premium. Why is this a premium? Why not up here? Well, that's the dealing range from there to here, but this dealing range is here to here. So you have a range that was excited and animated to the downside. So where did it start as a high? Right here. Just like this high here sets the stage for this decline down to here. Then we have this intermediate term bounce and then consolidation, and then the animation comes in right here. So your dealing range high is here to dealing range low here, which we anticipated a bounce at. So I want to talk a little bit about the weekly range, because that is a dealing range that is yet to be fulfilled. Okay, it's an unrealized dealing range. We work with this every single week. And the nature of what you're learning in this mentorship is finding opportunities in a weekly range expansion. We are not trying to forecast the closing price of the weekly range. But tonight, I'm going to teach you a little bit on how you can start to do that. Okay, it's not going to happen all the time, but this is one of the tools that I use to do it. I want you to take a look at the low here up to the high right there. Now I'm using the wicks and the tails. Why am I using the wicks and the tails right now and not the bodies? Because I'm using the entire range. I have to use the entire range because I'm going to show you the importance of having the 20 and 30 level. Now, in this mentorship, and I just don't recall exactly where it's at, but I'm going to teach you the TGIF trade, okay? And what that is the likelihood of a retracement and how far the retracement should go down, or if it's been going lower, how far it should retrace up. And the nature is you're trying to counter trend that. Now, before I get into this, please know that this is not something that you should be piling into if you're a new student. Like if you're a new student coming in month one, don't think that this is for you right now. It's not. I just want you to be, number one, fascinated with the level of precision that this is going to offer. And I'm also leaning on the things that I've already been talking about, that even the month one folks that have come in here, this has been in your videos. You probably didn't pay that much of attention to it because, again, you're listening for order blocks and things like that. This is one of those higher level teachings that once you see it, it's like, wow, there's absolutely an algorithm. There's something going on behind the scene that is not random. It's doing something that's highly specific, and there's rules to it. It's not just doing it indiscriminately. It's doing it based on a macro. A macro is a short list of instructions that is many times repeated. It's called upon. In programming, if you're a computer programmer, you kind of know what that is. But nonetheless, it's a recipe that keeps being used at specific times. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on in 2021. These are algorithmic theories. So you're going to see it. You're going to hear me call on things I've already talked about. And for some of you that are familiar with my TGIF trade, you'll see a lot of the logic that's being pulled from that as well. So what I'm doing is I'm calling your attention from this low to this high. And on my fib, I deleted or hid all of the 62% retracement level, the 79% retracement level. All I did was untoggle the boxes. They're still in the overlay for the fib. It's just I'm not calling on them to be visible in my chart. But I am calling on 0.2 and 0.3. Okay? If you put those in your Fibonacci, and I've already showed you in videos earlier a couple weeks ago, even for the folks that came in, you have this information. Don't email me. Go back and look at a couple videos ago, and you'll see it's the last portion of one of the videos where I show, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a daily log entry, where I'm actually showing you the last slide in the video. It'll give you the actual levels I have in my Fibonacci for TradingView. But these levels here, 0.2 and 0.3, are not in that. So I'm telling you, just add those into your Fibonacci and let that level, the 0 level, and the 1 level be the only levels that's visible. So in other words, toggle the little checkbox next to it. When you right click on the Fibonacci and click on properties or whatever, it'll take you to the visibility. And when you click on the little check next to each one of these levels, it'll appear. But if you untoggle the check, it won't appear on your indicator. Okay, so I feel dirty saying that word, indicator. But it is an indicator, but we're using it for purposes that are not, I guess, orthodox. So we're going to take this level of 0.2 and 0.3 and extend that out. And what we're saying is, at this high from this low, because it's been all one-sided, how far can it drop? Now, forget for the moment right now why this is likely to drop, because I'm going to come back to this in a minute. It will not be just pure hindsight, because I warned you about it before it happened. I know you're going to go crazy when you go back and listen to the video, because it was there. You just didn't hear it. This high and its retracement down inside of the range low, here to here. Okay, so this is that reaction on the order block on the daily chart. We have all of this movement higher, and then we're anticipating price moving from this high down. But how far? How far can it trade down? Well, what I like to use is the 20 level and the 30 level of a particular range. And if you do TGIF, I think, search on the forum, you might get the the teachings. I have to double check on that. Don't quote me on that, but I think if you do that, you'll be able to find it in the videos. But it teaches TGIF, which is an intraday trade counter trend for the week, just for Fridays. But it's the same logic of using the 20 and 30% of the range. Now, what am I saying here? I'm saying that if I think it's bearish, or if you think it's bearish, you can study instances where it'll trade back down into as much as 30%. Okay, and I'll bring all this together in the teaching as we go along. But for now, just anticipate this much of a retracement. Now you can see it goes a little bit beyond that, and we're going to go into the science behind all that too. But for now, just know that if we're looking at weekly ranges, or in this case, this has been the only expansion so far on the upside for the month of February. So this is, in my opinion, a dynamic dealing range. So it's been a lot of energy behind it, and it gets to a specific day where it could create a high. And if it does, how far can it retrace? Now, we're not saying that this is the absolute high. It just means that if you want to be a counter trend trader, these are the tools that you can learn here under my tutelage. Stripping the Fibonacci off and keeping these levels only in focus, we're going to study all of this from this retracement here to here. If you recall, on the Wednesday video, I mentioned that Thursday can end up becoming the weekly high. Now, I didn't just say it this Wednesday. I've been calling that theory multiple times since the beginning of this year. So all of the new folks have heard this idea more than one time. I stated that Thursday tends to make the opposite end of the range. So if it's been bullish, as it's been here, it's been going up since Monday, and then we get to Thursday, and Thursday caps the weekly range on the upside, and then Friday we see it trade down. It comes off of the low on Friday, but it's still not going higher than Thursday's high, correct? Yeah. Now, some of you are thinking, wow, that's kind of neat. Like, that's something he did talk about, and it's right here in front of me. Well, we're going to go one step further, because for some of you hardline critics in here, I'm going to blow your socks off. If we zoom in, drop down into a 15-minute time frame, I also told you the time of the day on Thursday that the weekly high in bullish environments tends to form. That is New York Open. I know some of you probably don't remember it. I know, but I've also told you to download these videos. Now, I don't have a magic wand that can go into your hard drive or your flash drive where you're storing these videos and change them. Now, the fun part is, for some of you that don't remember me saying this, when you go back and listen to that video, you're going to be like, whoa, he really did say that. Yeah, I did. So the question is this: what do you do with that information? Well, there's several things you can do. Number one, if you are a short-term trader, you want to have the bulk of your trade off as you're going into Thursday New York Open. If you've been long or been scalping and you've been bullish all week, you really want to try to avoid taking any new long positions after Thursday New York Open. And the bulk of your positions should be squared and leaving only a small portion on in case Friday runs a little bit further in the upside. But you're going to find that about 70% of the time, why 70%? Go back through the data like I did for 40 years. That's what I did. And it comes to around a 70% likelihood that this is what happens. Now, for some of you that heard me say that, you're going to say, every single week, ICT says 70% of the time, Thursday makes the high of the week. That's not what I said. There's filters that were applied to that data crunching. When the market is bullish, Thursday, New York Open tends to create the high of the week 70% of the time. What happens when the market's consolidating majority of the week? Is it likely to create the high of the week on Thursday? No. That's not what I said. When you are one-sided and it's been delivering buy side predominantly, in other words, it's just been a bullish day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, going into Thursday. Or if you looked at the weekly range from where it opened on Sunday to where it is trading on Thursday at New York Open, if it's been up in a bullish range, then it's probably creating the high of the day then, between 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning, New York local time. Now, think about that by itself. That right there spits in the face. That sounds offensive, but it's how I want to be about it. It spits in the face of these Goldman Sachs guys that are in this mentorship, by the way. Hello, Goldman Sachs. And you asked for this. That's the only reason why I'm saying it. They say that intraday traders or day traders are just basically working with noise, and no one can be consistent. No one can do these types of things. If you try to listen to these people like that, you're a fool. Run away from them because they're a con artist. Okay. Well, I must be a different kind of con artist, because the things I'm talking about in intraday trading seem to be working like science, like unbelievable science. And in fact, one of the Goldman Sachs alumni said, "You're not trying to do technical science." Well, around here, we're doing technical voodoo. We're doing things that defy all reasons that you would ever lean on in terms of retail logic, because what we're dealing with is something that is outside the scope of retail. So if we look at this high on Thursday at New York Open, what did I teach you about the wicks and the tails of candles? Okay, think about that for a moment. Pause your video before I say it. You didn't pause the video. The wicks and the tails are usually the variance by broker. You can't lean heavily on the wicks and the tails when you're looking for entries. Now, when you're measuring ranges, when you're trying to get the total range from low to high, you want to incorporate the tails and the wicks. But for entry purposes and targets for actual trades, I focus on the bodies. Okay. So with that logic in mind, looking at this area right in here, we had relative equal highs in here. So we had buy side liquidity here. The market runs up and takes that there. You see that? It runs above these highs right there. When did that move start? Did it start here? No. Did it start here? No. It started right there. Why here? Well, look at all the run up here. It dropped down. That's just a retracement taking stops. Runs again, comes back down, reaccumulates at the order block, and then pumps it through to get to buy side liquidity. So look at all this congestion in here. All that consolidation right there. Did this go below here? No. So we have a low, and then we have another low here. But it doesn't violate this dealing range low. So it's inside of that range. But it starts to run to here from that level. So that's why I'm telling you this is the dealing range low. So if you're looking at price, you're focusing primarily on these particular levels. The highest up close, the lowest down close. Now, in certain instances, you'll see that inside this area, it might be the lowest opening price. It's the lowest body, okay? So a body is defined by the open or the close. So we're looking at the lowest of either the open or the close, and we're looking for the highest of either the highest close or the highest opening price. So with that in mind, I'm going to add the Fibonacci on there. Now this time, I'm taking off that 0.2 and 0.3 level, and I'm only wanting to show the 0 level, the 1 level, and the -1 level. Now what that's showing here is a measurement from this candle's highest body to lowest candle body here. And it projects that range down 1 deviation. So the standard deviation of 1 of this range. So all we're doing is getting a measured move from this candle's close and this candle's close, and that same range projected from this candle's close down. That's what the math is doing with this indicator. All it's doing is allowing me to show, without having to draw it out, this is the level that's projected as a downside objective, which notice also is below. This is that 30 level, and this is that 20 level. In other words, this is 0.2 on that fib and 0.3 on that fib. When we drew it from the daily chart, and all those levels were removed, and only the 0.2 and 0.3 level was still in the fib. That's what these levels are here. When we drop down from this high at Thursday New York Open, we sell off and we go over the 0.3 level, or which would be 30% of the range that I measured from that daily order block up to this high. So did I pick out the high randomly? Is it hindsight? No. I told you Thursday New York Open tends to create 70% of the time the opposite end of the weekly range. Well, here's Thursday, here's New York Open, there's the high forming, and we're trading down here. What if you're not satisfied with just being able to call it down 30% of a retracement inside that range? What if you want to get really, really good at calling specific levels? Well, you have to incorporate the market structure here. Now, this is institutional market structure. Didn't you just mention this ICT in your YouTube video? Yes, I did. But I only teach it here. So when you're looking at market structure, you want to know how far a range can go. You have to have all the things I just gave you here, which were framed on institutional logic. Thursday New York Open tends to create the high of the week in bullish market environments. When does it not happen? When you have a real excited high impact news event on Friday. If there's a lack of any kind of news on Friday, generally that you're going to have that Thursday influence that you see here. Now, what I marked up over here was the institutional logic with this dealing range here. So I use this low that leads to this high here. So that is your dealing range that you work with for projecting downside standard deviations of 1. So this was one standard deviation going up to take the buy side liquidity out over here, but also forming the weekly high. Now we're going to take a huge quantum leap forward. If this is the high of the week and we take out this low, how far can we go down? Well, we can go down to the 20% of the weekly range. We can go down to 30% of the weekly range, but in case we get a little animated, where's it going? One standard deviation here calls for 1.20817. Now, mind you, this is Forex.com's data feed. So your live account, the low here is going to be slightly different because, again, as I taught with the wicks and the tails and the candles, your broker is allowed to have a little bit of fluff in there, and sometimes they won't give you the low. Sometimes it'll go a little bit lower than what I'm showing you in TradingView. That's okay. If you use 30 as your ideal, but standard deviation is just below it by a little bit, stick to the 30, and that'll be enough, okay, plus spread. But what about this over here? If we extend that out in time from that level, boom. Now think, high of the week, intraday, retracement carried over into Friday. Where's it going to go to? Right here. Oh, this is too much, Michael. This is hindsight lipstick. This stuff isn't going to work like this. Right, that's what you're thinking right now. But there's a couple videos that you see me doing things like this in the charts, and it doesn't make any sense when you looked at your chart. When I was showing those examples, you were looking at your charts and thinking, how is he doing that? How is he finding turning points? And why is he buying there? Why is there a limit order sitting right there when his market trades down to that level? It hits the order, it fills it, and then runs away. How's that happening? How is he able to do that? What is ICT doing? Well, some of this. Some of this right here. Now, my question to you is where is this in retail? I don't know where it's at. And I have a $200,000 bounty out there now if someone can find what I'm teaching anywhere in print prior to 1996. It's not there. Nobody has this. Not Gann, not Steve Nielsen, not Larry Williams, nobody. When I looked at the charts back in the 90s, at one of the times where I had taken losses and I couldn't understand what was going on. I was sitting in my room, which I was renting and paying room and board at my aunt and uncle's house. And I literally, in tears, was weeping. And I just said, God, am I ever going to be able to do this? Like, I want to be able to see what I'm supposed to see here. I know there's something behind these. At the time, I was looking at open, high, low, and close bars, not candlesticks. But I was like, there has to be something hidden. There's always something hidden. And I just want to be able to see it. Can you show me? Well, these are some of those things that were starting to come off. Now, you hear about that still, quiet voice. And the first time I heard about that as a Christian, I was kind of thinking more of it than what I have had many instances of in my life. And grant me a little bit of liberty here, because I know some of you are atheists and some of you have belief in other religions. I'm not religious. I have a relationship with Christ, and I'm not here to try to preach to you. I'm not here to try to win you over. I'm not trying to make you believe in the Bible. I'm just sharing. The question I get is, how did I get this information? I'm telling you how this came. There's no books out there. There's no mentor out there. There's no people out there that sat down with me and said, Michael, this is what's going on. The same voice that I heard when I was 14 going on 15 years old, and my closest friend at the time, Randy Humphreys, which is now, he's passed away. He pulled out his father's gun, and it's the classic scenario where kids are playing with guns, they shouldn't do it, and he pointed the gun in my face and started following me around in the house. And I was like, put it down, man, it's going to go off. He goes, it's not loaded, don't worry. And I was like, what? And my back hit the wall, and I was by his front door, and it was open, and a little voice said, grab the door and pull it in front of you now. And I just did it. Now, I know some of you are flipping out thinking, did this guy just say he heard voices? No, I heard voice. One. And it doesn't sound like anybody's voice I could think of. Now, you know what your internal voice sounds like when you're talking to yourself. Like, don't speed right now. There's probably a cop on the other side of that hill that you can't see, but you just don't listen. And then when you get on that side, you get pulled over. You're like, man, I should have listened. That voice that you heard is your own voice. That's your conscience, basically. This was something different. It was somebody else that wasn't my internal conscious voice. It said, grab the door, pull it in front of you. I did. And no sooner did it hit my shoe, it bounced off the toe of my shoe, but not springing too far in front of me. But as soon as it hit my shoe and bounced away, paint chips hit me in the face, and a loud bang went off, and my ears were ringing. My legs turned to rubber. I was scared to death, and I thought I got shot in the face. And I would have been shot in the face, point blank range, with a shotgun. All the shot was on the side of the door I was on. Paint chips were the only thing that hit me in the face. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what has this got to do with this? Well, when I opened the door up and I saw my friend's eyes, wide as they could possibly be, white as a ghost, and I'm sure I probably looked the same, not one of that buckshot hit me. Not one. But later on, we both touched the door, and just touching the buckshot caused it to fall to the floor on the side of the door I was on. What if I didn't listen to that voice? I wouldn't have the children I have. I wouldn't have the life that I have. And you wouldn't be listening to me learning about trading. Later on in life, I started hearing this voice and didn't, again, think too much of it. I just thought it was just a coincidence type thing. But my son, who is also turning 16 on Sunday, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, which is my anniversary. I just got to 20 years this Sunday with my wife. Been with her longer than 20 years, by the way, but nonetheless. When he was coming out in delivery, my wife was being asked by the nurse, and we were in Franklin Square Hospital at the time. She was saying, "Are you ready to have this baby?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to have him. He's so big. I want to just get him out. Like, he's too much pressure. I'm just done." And she goes, "Well, how much do you think he weighs?" And she goes, "I don't really care how much he weighs. I just wanted to get it over with and get him out. I just can't wait for him to, be in my arms." And now at the time, we were not allowed to record pregnancies and deliveries and such, and because of the liability issues. If they drop the baby, we have a slam dunk lawsuit. They don't want that. So I had the camera buried underneath my coats and my wife's coats, and all the diaper bag stuff that we brought to the hospital when she was getting ready to have the baby. So I have the camera recording the whole time. And when the nurse asks her, "How much do you think he weighs?" and my wife says, "I don't really care," the same voice that I heard when I was a teenager that said, "Pull the door in front of you," said, 6 pounds, 14 ounces. When he came out, I pretended in pantomime like I was turning the camera on, but it was on the whole time. And I walked over and they wiped him down and they laid him on the weighing table. And my camera was dialed right on in there because I wanted to see it come up. And it, no fluttering, not any movement, 6 pounds, 14 ounces. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? My youngest son, right before he was conceived, my wife and I had a miscarriage. I was in New York coming back from a trip, and she told me she had some stomach problems and a lot of pain. And I said, "Well, take it easy, and I'll be there in a few hours." Within the same hour, she texts. She says, "I need you to call me." So I called her, and she said, "I'm in a lot of pain, and I passed a clot." So I was like, "Okay, well, just lay there, and I'll be there soon. If you need your mom, call her." And I started praying to God, and I was like, don't let her have a miscarriage. But I had already kind of inside accepted it. I think that's what was happening, and it's what she did have. She had a miscarriage. And I basically was angry. I said, "I believe in you. I've trusted you, and why'd you let this happen?" And at the time, my wife wasn't really a believer. And I apologize if this offends any of you, because I'm not trying to make any of you feel like your religion or your lack of a religion is anything less significant in your own life. I'm answering something that I've always kept from all of you. But you want to know, so I'm telling you. I'm driving, I'm going down 95 South. I'm in New Jersey. I still got a ways to go. And I start talking to God. I'm like, how am I going to talk to my wife about you when she's mad at you already because you took her aunt from her? She passed away just a year or so before that with cancer, and she was mad at God. She goes, I'm mad at him. Why would he let this happen? If he was God, why would he let that happen? She was a good person. And I didn't have the answers for her back then. And I really didn't have an answer for this if she's having a miscarriage. Well, I get home, and it's what it is, and she's had a miscarriage. She had to go get a DNC and make sure everything was cleaned. We were trying to have a little girl. And without being too crude, we had already been intimate. A couple weeks later, without any more physical relationship, just awkwardness because of having the miscarriage and passing each other in the house without really saying too much of anything. And I'm trying to keep my distance because I want to talk to her about things, but she's not interested in talking. Well, at the time when I used to go to a church, I don't go to a church anymore. I pray every day, but I don't go to religious ceremonies and things of that nature. And I'm not trying to discourage any of you that do, because if you feel like you need to do that, then that's good, that you should do that. I don't feel that I need to do that. I have a very strong faith, as you're going to hear in this story and maybe one more. But I went to the church, and at the time, the pastor that was preaching up there, I'm sure he had some message that was really good, but I just couldn't hear him. I used to always sit at the farthest back pew. There was nobody behind me, nobody standing behind me. There was no chair or seat behind me. And the whole time I sat there and I was weeping, asking God, why did he do that to me? And how am I ever going to reach my wife? Whole time up there, that pastor's preaching his heart out, and I can't tell you one word he said. My attention was on this. I had a problem. I went there to worship, and I couldn't. I sat there and I complained and cried and asked, why are you doing this? Have I not believed in you? Have I not glorified you in the presence of people that don't even know who you are? Why are you doing this? That same voice I heard when I was a teenager, the same voice that told me my son's weight before he came out, over my right shoulder, I swear to God, I heard this. Judges 13:5, Michael. Judges 13:5. Now, at the time, I thought it was my imagination. And I knew if I would have grabbed that Bible and opened it up and it had nothing to do with anything I was thinking about, that would have been, I would have walked out of that church and I would have been done. For 2-3 minutes I wrestled. I said, I'm not going to open it up. I'm not looking at it. I grabbed it, thumbed through it. Judges 13, verse 5. Look it up. Behold, you shall conceive a son. The whole chapter's about a woman that can't have a baby. How did I pull that out of my imagination? I went home. I tried to talk to my wife about it. She said, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about God, and we're not having any more kids. I said, well, you got another thing coming. Because if he says it's coming, it's coming. That was on a Wednesday. That Sunday, I was watching TV. We were eating. And she went upstairs and she was doing some laundry. And she called for me. And I'm a little bit strange when it comes to eating. I don't like to have conversation when I'm eating, because the chances are I'm probably going to hear something that's going to upset me and turn me off. I won't be able to finish my meal. So she's calling for me, and I said, can you wait until I'm done? And that sounds a little rude, but it wasn't meant to be that way. And I guess she couldn't wait, obviously, and she came down, and she goes, here, and she's holding out something. Now, the ambient light from the television is all that was going on in the room, and a light from the dining room. And I thought she was handing me a toothbrush, like an electric toothbrush. But what it was a pregnancy test. And I grab it and look at it, and it says positive. And right away, I'm thinking she found the pregnancy test that she used to find out that we were pregnant before she had the miscarriage. And she was crying. So I was like, I'm sorry that she got reminded of that, because we hadn't been talking about any of it. And she goes, no, I just took it. And I was like, what? She goes, I just took it. Well, that's my youngest son, Caden. And we went to her first prenatal visit, and the doctor was saying, you know, we need to come back here. We need to check some things. And we went through a couple different visitations throughout the early part of her pregnancy. And they said, okay, well, we have a problem. We got to give you a C-section. The placenta is covering the cervix, and he's not going to be able to come out that way. That same voice said, that woman's a liar, and you don't need to worry about any of that. It's going to be a natural birth. So I spoke out, and I said, you're a liar. And her eyes got really big. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, because this baby's promised to me, and it's not going to come out through a C-section. God did not give me an issue like this for my wife to go through that. It's not happening. So I don't believe what you're saying. This baby's going to come out just fine. Well, he didn't come out by C-section. I could literally sit here and give you about 20 other instances like this. And it's not meant for you to believe in the Bible. It's not meant for you to believe that I'm a prophet. It's not meant for you to believe that I'm crazy. But imagine me going on Baby Pips and saying, here's how I learned all this stuff. You would have never listened to me. You would have laughed me off that forum, and it never, ever, ever would have been listened to beyond the first time I mentioned any of this. I don't care if you don't believe me. You can unsubscribe. You can stop. I don't care. I live this. And this same person talks to me. He encourages me. He corrects me when I'm wrong. When I used to look at these charts when I was younger, things would jump off like that. It would say, look at this. It wouldn't be a conversation. It would be, look at this. And I would study it, and it would be there. There is nobody sitting down with me when I was younger saying, this is what you do. You wouldn't believe me if I would have said this from the beginning. But where else can you find it? It's not anywhere else. I wanted to talk like this for so long. But this is my last one. And this is why I tell you, I get angry. And I'm offended when you all rip me off. Because you're stealing, not from me. You don't give him the opportunity to receive the glory. I don't want the glory. I don't want you to thank me. I don't want you to give me any praise. I'm not an FX god. I'm not a Forex trading god. I'm not nothing. I'm nothing but a human being that's been blessed with something I never deserved. I don't deserve any of this. If you knew me when I was younger, I was wicked. And I don't deserve any of this. But he keeps blessing me. And there's more than this. This is nothing. And I have to repent all the time because my flesh rises up when I see these fakes. These people out there, they talk smack, and they think this and they think that. I could get in there and win that Robin's Cup in a week. In 1 week. It wasn't given to me for that. My flesh all the time wrestles. All the time with everybody else that tries to be like there's something they're not. And I know they're not. You know they're not. These are some of the things I was going to put in the books I was going to write, but I'm not writing them. They'll get tossed around, prostituted like everything else. I want you to hear it. I wanted you to hear it from me. And I don't care if you don't believe it. Because it's the truth. And there's no other explanation for it. If you look at the Monday's low, Monday creates the low of the week. Thursday's New York Open creates the high of the week. When I tell you I can call the low and the high of the week, a lot of it has to do with what I'm showing you here. Not everything, not every instance of it. There's other things I'm going to teach you as we go through this year that leads to these types of results. But if you had one-sidedness like this all week, from Monday up into Thursday, chances are, unless there's a Friday high impact, medium impact is not so much a factor, but usually a high impact news event. And it's not likely that Friday has these high impact red announcements on the calendar. But if there's an absence of that high impact on Friday, you have the likelihood of Thursday creating the high of the week. Now, you don't always get an instance where it trades down this far. Sometimes it'll go just to 20% of the weekly range. If that's enough for you to find a trade in as a counter trend trade, that's something you can obviously explore and see if that fits inside of a model that you would feel comfortable trading with. It's very fascinating if you ever decide to trade it, that's one thing. But if you don't want to trade it, the study of it and how often it forms is really interesting. And this is what I meant many times so far in the new group, if you were listening to me, the idea of whether or not you listen to everything I say in the videos. I leave details in there that I'm going to be able to call on. And then when you get deeper into the mentorship, you'll see these older videos that are not old in the sense that they're stale or no longer important. They're relevant forever. They're rules because these things repeat. If you consider what I've shown you here, with this chart here, if we were looking at it from the scope of a weekly range, and we were looking at an open, high, low, close bar of the weekly range, it would look like this: the high and the low of the week, and where it opened for the week and where it closed. Again, we're not trying to forecast the closing price. But if you look at that weekly range, what I'm trying to impress upon you is, as a short-term trader, my focus is, if I'm bullish, I'm going to look at that opening price on Sunday. That's here. If I'm bullish, I'm going to be working most of my attention in the area right down in here, because that's usually going to be the first thought process is Monday low of the week. If nothing really lines up with technicals for me to suggest that Monday's creating the low of the week, then I'll look for Tuesday, because Tuesday generally is 70% of the time the low of the week. That's usually in London Open. Not all the time, but 70% of the time, when it's going to be a bullish week, that's usually what takes place. If it starts and creates a low on Monday and rallies up, and the London Open on Tuesday doesn't trade lower than Monday's low, then you have to obviously consider the fact that the low of the week was Monday, and therefore anything past London Open on Tuesday, just focus on being a buyer and don't anticipate Monday's low being taken out. There are some things you'll learn to anticipate Monday's low being taken out, but predominantly what I just said is true. Thursday is the high of the week when you're bullish, as I indicated in this here. But what changes that or negates that likely unfolding is, again, the economic calendar on Friday with a high impact news event. If it doesn't have one, chances are 70% likelihood Thursday is going to be the high of the week in New York Open. If you're going to be a counter trend trader, I'm not interested in selling short in weeks like this unless we get in this area here, and then I can take a counter trend short and sell short. That's the highest probability area to sell short when this criteria is in the marketplace. Otherwise, if you look at what's been going on in your losing trades, you fell victim to trying to sell short in all of this between Monday and Thursday. Somewhere in here, you're trying to sell short. That's how I lost. That's how I blew accounts too. Now you know the secret to why you're losing money. Now that you understand it, you can at least hopefully stop losing money and growing towards break even. Spend some time at break even, and then you'll be able to use information like this lesson here tonight to work towards profitability. I want to thank you for enduring my emotional conversation. I'm not looking for any kind of emails, because usually when I do things like this, I get a flood of emails saying, different things. I would appreciate if you didn't email me about this one. It took a little measure of courage to be able to speak openly, and this turns you off to me being your mentor. I understand. It might be a little unnerving listening to something like this, but that's how I seen all this stuff. That's how I learned it. Does it sound hard to believe? Probably. I would probably be just like you if you think like that. For some of you, you're going to think, wow, this is gift. Like, this is a gift. And that's how I see it too. An undeserved gift. So that's why I ask you guys that are in here doing this, and you're sharing it, and you're passing it around, you're selling it. Just consider that. Maybe it won't be any consideration on your part. Maybe it's more inspiration for you to want to do it. You're not stealing from me. There's been several times over the last couple of years I've been wanting to talk like this. And I don't want to talk like this a lot going forward. I'm not saying I won't ever bring it up again. And I don't want to sound like I'm pushing religion, because I'm not. I'm not religious. I have a relationship, and I believe what I believe and who I believe in. I'm going to give you one more before I go. In this mentorship, there's a guy. His father was preaching the night that I got saved. And Scott, I know you're listening. His father was preaching that night, and I went there because I wanted my son healed. My oldest son, Cody, was born through an adulterous relationship. I had sex with a married woman, unprotected, and he was a result of that. And he was born with a birth defect that caused his throat to close up. And had he not been taken to Johns Hopkins when we took him, he would have passed away in his sleep. I thought I was blessed with a kid that cried like a kitten, meowed. Like, he had a real soft cry. And I was like, man, if this is all he's going to do, I'm good with this. But I didn't realize he had something really going on down in his throat. Well, they gave him a scope down his throat when he was a baby and found out that his throat was closing up, and they said, well, we're going to have to do surgery. And when he did surgery, they found out that it was spreading towards his lungs. So naturally, it wasn't good news. Doctor came out while he was in recovery. We were waiting for him to wake up. He says, well, I opened his airway up. There was a lot of it down there. But we also found out that it's sitting at the corona of his lung. When your lungs branch off from your windpipe into your two separate lungs, that little section that divides the airways going into your respective lungs, he had a mass growing right there. And they said that if that goes in his lungs, we're kind of limited to what we can do. We can put some stents in there, but that's really not been shown profitable in our studies. Usually the growth rate overtakes it, and it doesn't really do much. It just gives you a little bit of time. But if it gets in his lungs, he's going to have to become a candidate for a heart and lung transplant. And they also told us that he's going to have to give surgery every 3 months. And he may end up losing his voice and never be able to speak. So after a couple surgeries, I was worn out. Now, I didn't have a relationship with God back then like I do now. I believed in him for guidance and helping me in understanding these markets, but now I had something different. I had a baby that I felt guilty asking him to help because I committed adultery with a married woman. And in my heart, I felt like he won't. So I went to a church where I believed other people had more faith than me. And I asked them, I said, look, can you pray for my son? But when I was in there, I felt different. Like I felt something in my chest, in my stomach, like stirring up, like a nervous excitement. And that same voice said, walk up there and tell him you're ready. So I walked up there. I walked up to the head pastor, shook his hand. I said, I don't know why I'm supposed to be telling you this, but I'm ready. He says, well, we have a service in the evening time, prayer earlier. You're welcome to come. I said, all right. The time couldn't go fast enough. I kept looking at the clock. I couldn't wait. I don't even know why. I get there. I'm in the prayer part of it. A couple people's in there. Music's playing real low, and I feel out of place. I said, God, if you're going to ever do anything with me beyond what you've done, You better show up right now, because if I don't get any kind of reaction or help, I'm afraid I'm never going to look this direction again. Service went through. I was excited. I felt like the message was being given right to me. Taste and see that the Lord is good. That was the message. At the end of the service, there's a small little opening in the left-hand side of the altar. Everybody else was up there. There were one or two people. They were older. I guess they had issues with walking around easily. They were the ones that remained seated. And then here I was, all the way in the back. And I said, okay, I'm walking up there. And I was nervous. And I've got butterflies in my stomach right now talking about it all over again. I didn't know what to expect. I walked up, stood in that spot like it was waiting for me. I bowed my head, had my hands crossed in front of me. And I just was in my head saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But if you're going to do anything with me, Lord, do it now. Because if I walk out of here unchanged tonight, I don't know what I'm going to do. But it ain't going to be anything like this. I felt a hand on my right shoulder. It was the assistant pastor. He said, Michael, are you ready to pray for repentance? And I said, yes. And he led me through a prayer. And he said, all right, now whatever you feel like you want to say, you just say it. And what felt natural for me to say was, I love you, Jesus. And I started to say something else after that. And then I lost control of my tongue. I started talking in a language I never learned before. It was such a beautiful experience, but scary at the same time. I've never felt more alive than that moment, ever. I opened my eyes up. The senior pastor standing in front of me, he said, welcome to the family. He said, the word says, if you've received the Spirit, you got to be born again with water baptism in Jesus' name. And I submitted to that as well. Came up out of the water again, started talking in tongues. I know some of you in here don't want to hear things like this, but it's the truth. Two nights ago in the church after that night, and again, I know this sounds like I'm preaching to convert people. I can't convert anybody. Unless God draws you, you can't. Period. It just doesn't work that way, because I tried real hard for years. And it came to the conclusion that if someone asks me, then I'm going to talk about it. They're going to see it in my life. And then they're going to ask. Well, a lot of you asked. And since it's my last one, I'm not doing a mentorship next year. And I just need to get it off my chest. I'm telling you. My real secret is what I'm telling you. A couple weeks ago into the service, I came home one night and I was really, really amped up. I felt so good. And this spirit of doubt just came over top me when I was driving home. I was by myself. My wife wasn't interested in going. She was like, no, I'm not going to that place. I got in my car, I stood on the porch, and I turned around, looked up at the stars, and I said, God, I want to ask you something. Now, if I go to a church and say something like I'm going to ask you right now, many times preachers will say, don't tempt the Lord, don't test the Lord, don't do those types of things. And I just don't have that kind of faith. I got Old Testament kind of faith. And that's why I liken myself a lot to the experience on Mount Carmel when it comes to all these other frauds out there. Like Elijah, I'll troll, I'll insult their belief system and their retail stuff. I'm, in my mind, pretending to be Elijah when I'm talking to all these fakes in the trading industry, because I know what I got. I know who I got. Well, I stood on the porch and I'm looking up at the stars, and it was a clear night. There are so many stars out there. And I said, God, I'm going to ask you something. If you would please just hear me out. If you never, ever, 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 ever answer a prayer again in my life, if you do this one thing for me, I will never lose faith in you, ever. No matter how hard my life gets, no matter whatever happens, I will always know that you hear me. But I don't want to feel like I'm all worked up, like men do when they watch football games and they get all riled up. That never made any sense to me. They're throwing around a piece of dead pigskin, inflated, trying to break each other's bodies up. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then the people cheered on like, yeah. When I go to church and I worship you and I'm around other people, am I getting emotional? Or is this like really what's going on? Like, am I deceived by any of this? And I guess the only way I'll know the answer to that is if you answer this. Can you hear me right now? Can you hear me asking this question? Because if you can hear me, as insignificant as I am, you as the creator of heaven and earth, if you can hear me amongst everything else and everybody else in this existence praying to you when they do, I need you to give me a sign. Just give me one sign, and I already know that you know what I'm going to ask for. And you're probably smiling, thinking you could have asked for anything, and you asked for this. And what's funny is, I already know you're going to do it. I don't know how I can tell you in words what I'm saying and make it sound any more believable, because I'm hearing myself say it right now. And if someone else was saying this, I would have been like, this guy's nuts. But I stood there that night on my porch and I said, Lord, I'm not asking you to give me anything in particular. I'm not asking you to heal me of anything. I just want you to tell me with a sign that you hear me. And that means to me that no matter what I ask for, you've heard me. And if it happens and it comes to me, then it was your will. And if it doesn't come to me and I don't get it, it's still your will. And I'm okay with it, because I'm going to trust that you know better than I do. I'm looking up in a specific location in the sky at the moment as I'm talking to him. And I'm talking to him just like I'm talking to you right now. I wasn't on my knees. I wasn't having my hands up in the air. I just had a heart-to-heart talk with him. I said, God, I want you to send a shooting star, but not something little tiny little thing. Like, I need to see it right where I'm looking at right now. And I already know you're sending it. I'm not blinking. I'm not moving from this position. I'm not turning my head. I'm looking right there. And I swear to God Almighty, with my life and my family, I'm telling you, right where I was looking, I'm not sure if you ladies in here remember back in the 80s, there's like soap operas that used to be on TV, and I guess they still are in a way. But every time they showed like a hospital scene and they had the people in the heart monitor machines, it would look like two little dots bouncing off of each other. Okay? Kind of think of that. That's what I was looking at in the sky, right where I was looking. It wasn't somewhere else. It was right where I was looking at. And I was watching it. It did like maybe 4 or 5 times going towards the left. And then where it stopped, this shooting star shot across the sky the opposite direction. And in my mind, that was enough. And I was ready to part my lips and say, thank you. I was ready to say, that's it. That's all I need to see. But before I could do it, this is going to take a little bit of imagination on your part, okay? I want you to hold your right arm out straight in front of you. And imagine holding a baseball in your right hand at arm's length stretched out in front of you, okay? Directly in front of your face. But now imagine that baseball, a grapefruit. So it's a little bit bigger than a baseball. All right. Now imagine a ball of fire as big as that grapefruit, going about half the distance across the sky, right where I was looking at. It was so bright, it lit the whole area up, and the whole area around my house was like daytime. I heard it. It was like crackling as it came in to the atmosphere. It lit up the whole area was lit up bright, like it was daytime. Now, as soon as this happened, I immediately looked to my left and my right, like, was there somebody else that just saw that with me? Like I could not believe what just took place. Now, mind you, I said, all I need to do is see this, and then I will absolutely trust and believe that you hear me. And when I pray, you'll hear me. It doesn't mean it's yes. It doesn't mean you're going to give me what I'm asking for. It just means that you can hear me. And I will always refer back to this moment when it gets rough. If I ask for help and it doesn't seem like it's coming in the form that I want it, it's okay. You know better than I do. I didn't mention this in the buildup of all this, but I told him, I said, I know we're told that we're not supposed to put you to test or tempt the Lord or anything like that. And I don't think those verses even mean that. And let me tell you the reason why I do think that way. There was a guy in the Bible named Gideon. He heard a voice too. And he said, well, I'm not sure what I'm thinking right now, but I'm going to put it to the test. And I'm going to lay something outside my tent. And if the dew goes on the ground and not on the hide of the animal I'm laying down on the ground, then I'll know it's not my imagination. So he goes to bed, comes up the next morning. What he asked for happens. Dew's on one thing and not on the other. He said, okay, just to make sure, if you're the Lord, reverse it and do the same thing, just opposite. And he woke up the next day, went outside, and the dew of the morning was only on one thing and not the other. Now, is that somebody that was testing the Lord, or is that somebody just making sure they weren't being misled? And that's what I gave God that night. I said, you did it for Gideon. And I have a lot of faith. I have childlike faith. Like, I have crazy faith. Like, I have it. And that night, he gave me exactly what I was looking for in 3 different manifestations in the same area I was looking. And I have told this story so many times to my children. And I have a journal that I have recordings of things like that in my life. And I write them down because when my youngest son was little, I was afraid if something would happen to me, he'd never hear about it. So I write down all of these experiences I've had. And I do it so that way my children know who I believe in, why I believe in him, and why they should too. Because the life they live is not because of who you are and what you send me through PayPal. I'm a blessed man even before you met me on Baby Pips. I'm a blessed man because he saved me so many times that I should have been dead. I often think to myself, because there's a lot of instances where I should have been taken out of this world. Why is he keeping me here? Is it this? Am I talking to somebody that's just, they don't want to go on anymore? They don't feel like they don't deserve anything more? They just need somebody to tell them, you just got to keep going on and it's going to come. Maybe. I like to think that's what this is. But even if it isn't, I promised I would do this. So I do. He's always faithful to me. And in the past, I've really shown myself up as a braggart, conceited, self-centered. And I'm talking about before you knew about me. The same guy in his mentorship, its father was the preacher that night. He used to come to my place when I was younger. And if he was here talking with us, he would tell you I was living way, way, way below my means because I was hiding from my oldest son's mother. She was coming after me for money, and I did everything I could to keep her from getting any of it. My son didn't do without for anything. He had the best of everything. I just was not giving her a lifestyle because that's what she was aiming for. When you look back and you see different points of your life where you were thinking it was the worst time of your life, you can think, man, that sucked. I wish I could have avoided that. I used to think that way. And I can literally look back now and see how I was being kept from real harm, real danger, real lack. And he was building me up to the man that's talking to you right now. Because I'm going to tell you, as a 20-year-old, I never would have been teaching or talking to you like this. I would have hid it. I would have looked at this as weakness. It's not. It's adoration. It's love. And total appreciation for something that I didn't deserve. And this is why I tell everybody, don't praise me. Don't lift me up higher than just a man. That's it. I'm not a cult leader. This is not a cult. It's not a religion. This is my life. And I've invited you all here. I've had chance meetings with people throughout my whole life that never would have happened if it wasn't supposed to. Some people wanted me to do things that I couldn't begin to imagine doing. And I wouldn't want to go that direction. So now I have this direction in life. Some people try to kill it. They try to devalue it, call it fraud, call it con artistry. You all here see it. And I could have been doing this in public all this time, drawing so much attention to myself. That's not what I want to do. Now everybody in Forex is taking my stuff, using my name, And I'm becoming the thing. And I don't want to be it. I want to reduce. Because the more I stay in this, and the more people lift up me, the less he receives. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. But if anything ever happens to me, if you ever remember me, I want you to remember this conversation. This is the one I want you to remember about me. Because this is me. This is the real me. There's no act. There's no facade. A younger me, without having these experiences, I would have taken this information and this gift and abused it. I would have been on Instagram. You would have been seeing me spending $150,000 a week like it was nothing, and betting people that I couldn't do more on a dare. That's the kind of stuff I did when I was younger. Dumb stuff. All about me. And I was wanting to be worshipped as a 20-year-old. I wanted it because I needed that sense of significance. Every tutorial I've ever put out talking about average Joe, that's me. I no longer need to do those things. I found all the significance in the world because I know who gave me this. I know who continues to bless me. And it doesn't make a difference who you believe or what you believe about me. Nothing's going to diminish this. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do or say to challenge it. So there's no book. There's no author. There's no guru. There's nobody that secretly came into my 20-year-old life and sat down over top of charts and showed me these things. There are people that are trying to stop me from sharing this with you. For the last 11 years, they've pressed. I just keep doing what I'm doing. If you look around, the world's changing. Things might be changing on a monetary system. I don't know what's coming until it breaks or is replaced with something else. My faith is in what I'm teaching you. When it stops working, if it ever does, you'll know, but it won't be defined by 1 or 2 days of consolidation or just lethargic price action. It'll be obvious. The whole system will be broken. So, with that, every new week is another opportunity to learn more. Every time I sit down before I do these videos, I ask him the same thing. Give me wisdom. Give me the words to say. And let me be understood. And you get all the glory. By the feedback, it seems like he's being faithful in that regard. The markets tend to be doing what I feel led to say. But I also feel like I'm being led to draw this to an end. And that's why this is the last one. So, it is. If I would have put this in a post on a YouTube tab or a tweet, it probably wouldn't have had the same impact. And normally, I do a pretty in-depth editing process because I want to make sure that you don't hear my dogs. My wife might be correcting one of my children. It's a household just like anybody else's. So I try to take those things out that are not quote unquote professional. Not that some of you are probably thinking none of this is professional. But if you think that, just do me a favor. Don't send me an email about it. Because you'll just offend me to the point where I won't want to answer any emails you send me. I want to be a mentor that I can be honest and open with you. But I don't want to be ridiculed or punished if you're alignments with another religion or if you don't have any religion. I'm not here to make anybody feel alienated. I know some of you in here are Muslim. I know some of you in here have faith in things that I don't even know about. I don't know every religion. And I have friends that are atheists, and they tolerate me, and I tolerate them. I don't preach to them. And I don't want any of you thinking that this video was a preaching session to you. It was me being honest and giving glory and honor to the person that gave me this. And I already know some of you are just really uncomfortable with it. But this isn't a regular thing. I've had a lot of sincere requests for me to answer things like this. And if I would have did it on YouTube, they would have made fun of me. They would have did copies of the video and did, the regular stuff that they usually do. And it still might happen here. Doesn't diminish it. But I felt it, if anybody deserved to hear it, you all did. I could have done it on a SoundCloud. I felt led to do it today. So, if I made you uncomfortable, I apologize. It wasn't my intent to do that. If I offended any of you, it wasn't my intention. But please, don't email me and talk about how don't do this in the future, blah, blah, blah. Because if you feel that strongly that you feel like you want to send me an email, just don't continue the mentorship. Because I can't promise I won't have this kind of discussion in the future, because we have another year of content. And it's probably going to be an instance where something gets brought up in my memory about how I learned this or that. And we'll probably be walking through not so much a long one like this, but it'll be easier for me to feel comfortable talking with you. And I don't want to think of the guy or the gal that sent me the email the last time I talked like this. That, to me, makes me uncomfortable. and I'll obsessively think about it because I've already told you I suffer with that. So I've talked your ear off tonight. I've showed you some things tonight, hopefully, that were insightful. Hopefully encouraged you. And I promise I don't do drugs. I have not taken any kind of hardcore narcotics. I'm not on any kind of hallucinogenics, and I don't drink alcohol. So I was absolutely sober tonight. I was in my right mind. Everything I said is the truth. And I hope it doesn't change your view of me or reduce your respect of me as your mentor. But I have been asked many times along the years, and now because so many of you came in this recent enrollment, my staff's like, look, can you just talk about where you get this stuff from? So now you know. I don't want you thinking that I think I'm special or clairvoyant or a prophet. I am not equating myself to anything like that. All I'm saying is I'm an undeserved recipient of something that I would have never learned. I never would have learned this had it not been from who I learned it from. And when people see me do what I do, the natural response is, I know something illegal. I'm doing something illegal. I'm doing what I'm showing you. So, I'm not going to be on YouTube posting my normal Saturday thing, whatever it is I do on Saturday. My anniversary is this Sunday, so I will be probably posting on Monday at my earliest. This weekend, it's wifey time. So until I talk to you on Monday, enjoy your weekend and be safe.